Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 127 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
I'm good, man. How about you?
I'm doing great.
I'm thinking about episode 127.
Yep.
I think that's I think I weighed 127 when I was in those Huskies back in the day.
Did you?
Back in my little elementary, big boy.
I swear somebody the other day sent me a picture of a restaurant that was called Huskies.
Really?
And they were probably sending it to you, but obviously I monitor the email, so.
I think the worst picture I've seen, the funniest one is lately has been the one that someone put out there with you in your furry suit, me with some chaps up on stage.
Sure.
That was pretty funny.
Those tickets are $35 a piece.
Hey,
coming to a venue near you.
I think we might be able to sell out that venue if it's a small venue, like 5 people.
5 people.
Yeah.
All right. So we had some new Patreon supporters. So let's give our shout outs.
Okay.
We had Heather Klinger.
Hey, Klinger.
Suzanne K.
Hey, Suzanne.
Alyssa Oliver. Maya Baddeley.
You got that right.
All
From
right.
Australia.
Karen Kirk.
Hey, Karen.
Pamela Matthews.
What's up, Pamela?
Phyllis Beatty.
Hey, Phyllis.
Lucy Debrincat.
We'll just go with In the Sky with Diamonds.
Exactly. Estienne Carlson.
Ooh, Estienne.
Hope Hollenbeck.
Hey, Hope.
Tammy Paul.
Hey, Tammy.
Don.
Just Don.
Hannah.
And, Hannah's a badass.
If
If it's the Hannah I'm thinking, don't mess with her.
I don't know. There's a lot of Hannahs. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there's a lot of Hannahs in the world.
I'm thinking about Hannah the movie.
Tommy Moore.
Hey, Tommy.
Jess Quinlan.
What's going on, Jess?
Christina Nelson.
Hey, Christina.
Erica Bird.
Thanks, Erica.
Lauren Tehan.
Tihan.
Caroline George.
What's going on? I want to say George, but then it'd be like a first name. So
yeah,
well, I will anyway.
I figured you would. Nick Knack.
Patty Whack.
Give a dog a bone.
Okay.
Ursuline.
Hey, Ursuline.
Regina.
Did you hear me say Ursuline?
Yeah, I did. I just let it go, though.
Okay.
Which is not like me, but I
know.
did.
Hey, Regina.
Sierra Nutt jumped out at our highest level.
Hey, Sierra, thank you.
Sabrina Zorita.
Ooh, Zorita.
And Estaleski Daganovich.
Daganovich.
Yeah.
Okay.
That one's hard to say.
It is hard to say.
And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs.
Let's go back.
This week we selected Paige Summerfield.
Hey, Paige.
So we appreciate all the new Patreon support, the continued support we get. It's amazing. We are getting ready to, next Saturday night, put out our very first video Patreon only episode. So, if you've thought about signing up for Patreon, now's a great time. There's a lot of extra TCAT content.
Because we're really camera good, man.
I don't know if we are. I don't think you'd call us camera ready.
We're not.
But if you want to see me make a lot of wild hand gestures as we do the podcast,
yeah,
it's on there.
Yeah, enjoy.
We had some great PayPal support as well. We had Heather Allen.
Hey, Heather.
Candace Zugich.
Hey, thanks, Candace.
Melissa Buell.
Melissa.
Geraldine Jensen.
Ooh, Geraldine.
And Dale Scarset.
What's up, Dale?
All right, Gibbs, we have a TCAT episode out right now. It's on the murder of Colleen Slimmer.
Brutal.
Extremely brutal. So a little bit of a different type of episode for us. The victim's name is in the title, which is unusual for a TCAT episode. One of the reasons is because there are multiple perpetrators, but there's really one ringleader.
Yeah.
And that happens to be a girl named Krista Pike.
Man.
And about as vicious of a woman as we've come across.
That's for sure, man. And she just didn't care.
No, she definitely didn't have any empathy, but it's a good episode. Make sure you check that out.
For sure.
Don't forget about our new podcast called The Reviews Are In.
Yeah.
There's 2 episodes out right now.
The shake weight.
There will be another one in a couple of days from the time this episode drops.
Excited.
Every Tuesday morning when you wake up, there'll be a new episode. All right, man. Are you ready to get into this episode of Unsolved?
I'm ready.
We are talking about the 1987 Fager family murders. This is an unsolved set of murders of 3 out of the 4 family members. The dad and his 2 daughters were killed in Wichita, Kansas in 1987. And I guarantee you, Gibbs, that a lot of our TCAT listeners, people that listen to, that show,
right,
are thinking in their head right now, 1980s, Wichita, Kansas, could it be BTK?
Sure.
And don't worry, that is a rabbit hole we will go down. It also coincides nicely with season 2 of Mindhunter.
It does.
Which I'm very excited about.
You're going to go binge it?
I am. I've been holding off. I'm trying to get enough time because I don't want to just watch one and then be stuck for a couple of days too busy. I like to binge them.
Well, you just want to sit on the couch for hours upon hours upon hours.
I do. The problem is you and I don't have hours upon hours upon hours.
No.
So it was a few days after Christmas that Mary Fager said goodbye to her husband and her 2 daughters in Wichita, Kansas. She was traveling home to her family in Emporia, Kansas for a quick holiday visit. She wasn't going to be gone that long.
But you like to go home and visit the family if you haven't seen them in a while, especially around the Christmas time.
Sure.
I always like to go because I want to get my presents.
It is the time when I think most people are traveling.
Yeah.
Number one, a lot of people have that time off. Number 2, you are somewhat obligated, whether you want to or not, to go see your family.
Yeah. Try to tell your mom and dad you're not coming.
There is a somewhat of a built-in obligation to make the rounds.
I always thought it was funny back in that day, when you had little kids, your mom and dad are at home, no kids.
Sure.
Right. But you're packing up your kids.
A lot of time retired, no job anymore.
Yeah. But you're packing up your kids, hauling them out, and you're like, wait a minute.
Which is way tougher.
Wouldn't it make more sense for you to come to us?
Yep. That was always the same with us too. The kids open their presents. They've got them all over the house, but yet now they can't play with them because we have to load up the car.
Yeah.
Why don't you just come over and hang out?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of parents that they like to stay in their own house.
Well, you know what? They're probably like, you know what? We used to do what you're complaining about.
Exactly.
Now it's our time. So suck it up.
And we'll be like that too.
I know. We're like, hey, just bring your kids over here.
So on New Year's Eve, it was a Thursday in 1987. Mary arrived back home after her family visit. She got there about noon. Their house was located at 7015 East 14th Street. Now, she had been gone not too long, but long enough to, really miss her family. She was excited to see her husband. She was excited to see her daughters.
It's the holidays.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I think pretty quickly she was surprised that, no one came out to meet her in the driveway. No one rushed out into her arms to say, "Oh, Mom, we love you. You're back. We've missed you."
Right.
She walked into the home and she saw her husband lying on the living room floor, fully clothed. He was wearing his overcoat, but it had blood on it. Mary was in shock. And I think like anybody would in her situation, she started to panic. Her husband's lying on the floor. Her daughters didn't run out to greet her. She's running around looking for them. She's screaming for them.
Sure. Where are you?
No answer. At some point, Gibbs, it popped into her head that the family Volkswagen was gone. So she was probably thinking, okay, my 16-year-old daughter took my 9-year-old daughter. They went somewhere.
Yeah.
I got a bad situation here. Something bad has happened to my husband. I got to figure that out. But maybe my daughters are safe and it's a good thing they didn't see this.
Yeah. And I'm sure she's also thinking, this is not a good place for me to be right now because I don't know whoever did this to my husband. Is that person still here? Let me get out of here. I'm going to go across the street to the neighbors and get a hold of the police.
So the neighbors called police. They came, they got Mary. Obviously, she told them, my husband's bloody. He's laying in the living room. They take her to the police station, get her out of there so that they can start an investigation. But they also need to find her 2 missing daughters.
Yeah. I'm sure she said, hey, they're missing. The family car is missing. And I'm sure they're looking for it.
Police get into the home. I think first and foremost, they've got to worry, like you said, like she would have been worried about, is somebody still in this house? They got to clear the house.
Sure. It's what you do as a police officer.
They see the husband laying on the floor. They could tell he was shot to death. But as they walk through the house, they go down into the basement. No sign of the girls. They walk out a rear door from the basement that leads to this kind of partially finished sunroom. And police notice that the hot tub cover is kind of bowed up. Like it's not laying flat like you would normally see.
Like it would typically lay. Yeah.
It's got a bow in it. Like something's propping it up. An officer pulled back the hot tub cover and saw 9-year-old Sherry and 16-year-old Kelly. They're both dead. They're floating in the hot tub. And you know, Gibbs, extremely tough for the authorities to have to relay this information to Mary. I mean, she already knows, or I'm assuming believes, that her husband is dead.
Sure.
Based on what she's seen, they're going to confirm that.
Right.
But to have to tell her that they found her 2 daughters dead in the hot tub, and from Mary's point of view, you've lost your whole world.
Oh.
Every member of your immediate family.
Stripped away.
Devastated.
Yeah.
So the police chief is at the house with his officers, and they determined that there was no break-in, right? It wasn't like somebody pried open the door. So my assumption, Gibbs, their first thought was probably friend, family member.
Yeah.
Not stranger.
Somebody that you had to let in. Because when Mary got there, she had to unlock the door to get in.
Well, and they also did not see signs of, some type of violent struggle.
Right.
But I don't know what that means, because, I think if somebody were to break into your house, especially if they shot the dad first.
Yeah.
I mean, these girls they're going to hear that. They're probably going to run and hide somewhere. Are they going to put up a violent struggle with this guy with a gun?
Probably not at that age. More so just scared and going to, like you said, probably try to hide.
And for that matter, would the dad put up a violent struggle? If someone had a gun on you, are you going to lunge for them? Or are you thinking, okay, they're here to rob me. I'm going to give them what they want. I'm going to keep myself safe, but I'm also, and even more importantly, going to keep my girls safe.
Right. We're going to just get through this moment.
Yeah. Take whatever you want and leave.
Right.
But the person wasn't there for that. They were there to kill, and that's a whole different story, but you don't know that
right
at the time. The police didn't find a weapon inside the home or around it. And you mentioned the family's 1983 Volkswagen. It was a gray 4-door Rabbit. It's missing, so the police put out an APB for it. The chief of police estimated that the murders occurred on Wednesday morning, December 30th.
And I think part of it is because the police state that the Wednesday morning paper was inside the home, yet the Thursday morning paper was still on the porch. And so this kind of helped place a timeline.
They're police officers.
Right.
They're not trained medical examiners. So, they can't examine the body and really get to the time of death, but that's a plausible explanation.
Yeah.
The Wednesday paper was taken into the house. Well, who took it in there? And why did nobody grab the Thursday paper?
Exactly.
But Gibbs, I think before we get into the actual coroner results and the investigation, let's take a minute and talk about this family. The husband and father was Melvin Philip Fager. He was born August 29th, 1950, and he went by Philip. He was 37 years old at the time of his death. He was a dedicated father, husband. He worked as an accountant for the Boeing Airplane Company, and specifically in its military division.
It actually sounds like an interesting type of job, working for Boeing.
I think being in the military division maybe makes it more interesting. You got all these fat military contracts, and as an accountant, you got to keep track of all that.
I tell everybody I'm doing top secret work anyway.
the kind where they lock you in the vault as soon as you get there, and they don't let you out until
take my phone away.
It's time to go home. You'd never work at a job where they took your phone away.
That'd be a problem.
Your phone is glued to you 24 hours a day. 16-year-old Kelly Jo Fager was born January 27th, 1971. She was a junior at Southeast High School, and she was loved and admired by many people. Kelly was outgoing. She was intelligent. She really enjoyed school, and she liked to play sports as well.
She even worked part-time down at the local McDonald's.
A pretty popular first job for a lot of people.
Yeah, it really is.
9-year-old Sherry Fager was born November 29th, 1978. She was in the 3rd grade at Jefferson Elementary School. She was known as a kid that was happy.
Man, she just put a smile on people's faces every day, is what they said about her.
She liked to laugh, and like her big sister, she loved to play sports.
And this family loved to camp. They did. They had one of those little box campers that they pulled behind the car, and they went to California, Washington State. They even went as far as Florida to have these camping excursions. And really, it was kind of like the highlight of their summers.
It was their summer vacation.
Yeah.
Right? These camping trips. So the service for Philip, Kelly, and Sherry was held on Monday, January 4th. There was over 500 people in attendance. So over 500 people attended the memorial. Then after the sermon, over half of those people, so more than 250 people, walked to the gravesite for the burial.
And that was on a very cold and freezing day. That just tells you that, I mean, people were like, we're not leaving.
No, they really came out to pay their respects to this family.
Yeah.
I think it goes a long way towards showing you what type of family this was, or what type of respect that people had for them.
Sure. And what a good community it was.
That too. So eventually the coroner did release the murder details. It was determined that Philip died from one of the 2 shots to his back. And these were point blank range shots. One of the bullets went through his heart and exited his chest.
Pretty powerful.
Well, it's powerful, but you're also firing the shot from point blank range. So it's not losing a lot of momentum because you're not that far away at all.
So that impact is strong.
Yeah, until it exits the body. Now, we didn't mention it when we talked about Kelly being found, but she was found naked in the hot tub. The coroner concluded that she was strangled with black electrical tape that was a 1/2 inch wide. Her hands were also restrained behind her back using the same exact tape. But even though she was strangled, her cause of death was drowning. Sherry, the youngest, was found with her pajamas on. But just like Kelly, she was restrained with her wrist taped behind her back and strangled with the same electrical tape.
Yeah, exact same method.
And the coroner listed her cause of death as drowning as well. The coroner was quoted as saying that the 2 girls were most likely close to asphyxiation and then drowned to complete the murders.
And there's some theories around that, as you mentioned, when the police walked down the stairs and the officer saw the kind of the pop-up of the hot tub cover. Some people think that maybe the killer put them in the hot tub, the lid was closed, and because they weren't dead yet, that they had some life into them and they tried to pop the cover off. They tried to get out and they were struggling underneath before they died. Some people that have that out there, I don't know if that's really true. That could happen.
Yeah, I don't know if I so much agree with that. I'm not saying it's not possible. What makes more sense to me, Gibbs, is that the killer strangled the 2 girls with the electrical tape. They passed out. Maybe he thought they were dead. They're in the hot tub, but they're unconscious and they drowned. So either he drowned them or he thought they were already dead and they drowned just because they were unconscious.
Conscious.
Either one. I don't know that they would get trapped underneath a hot tub cover. To me, a hot tub cover is not that hard to get off, but
I mean, really, and you're right, because just the bodies floating up, just in the swirl of the water, probably could have just been enough to bounce that top up a little bit, I would think, because they're not heavy.
No, I think, not to be too macabre about it, but they're floating above the water, right? So their bodies were most likely pressing up on the hot tub cover. That was what was making it bow. That's my assumption.
Yeah, unless you really secured that down.
Which there was no indication in the research
That it was.
Because I think the police officer just came, he lifted it off. Now, one thing that's important that comes out of the autopsy is that the coroner could not tell for sure if the girls were victims of a sexual assault. The coroner did put the time of death at about 24 to 28 hours prior to police finding the bodies.
Kind of close to what the chief of police had.
I think it's in the ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, it's there. I wonder if it was hard to determine when the girls passed because they were in 90-some degree temperature.
Well, I would think it would definitely have an effect. So police are investigating these murders. They're looking for clues, they're looking for leads.
And the police had a hard time because no one would have seen what occurred around the hot tub because of the way that this home had sat.
Well, because the hot tub's in the back.
Yeah.
Right? So nobody driving by. Nobody's going to come forward and say, I was driving by on Wednesday and I saw a man with two girls by the hot tub. It couldn't be seen.
Not going to happen.
From a car driving by. But keep in mind, police have not yet found the family's 1983 Volkswagen Rabbit.
And that's got to be probably their best lead at this point. I mean, we know the mom didn't have the car. The dad, the girls are dead. So who else would have taken that vehicle?
The most likely person being the killer.
Yeah.
So my thought is, police are thinking, find the car. That's our best lead to finding out who killed three members of this family. They had about 20 detectives working this case. The police chief didn't even have 20 detectives. They had to borrow detectives from other departments. But this is high priority, high profile. It sets the community on edge when a respected family, three of its four members, are killed.
And this is Wichita. The community is probably on edge already a little bit because they already have some unsolved murders out there. Because at this point, they haven't caught BTK.
No, and it's going to be a long time, right, before they do, almost 20 years.
And the chief of police is quick to point out, too, that he doesn't think this is related to the other unsolved cases. He thinks this is standing on its own.
So I don't know. Does that put the community more at ease or more on edge?
If I was in the community, I'd be more on edge because I'm thinking...
You got a different killer.
I got BTK and I've got, I don't know who over here, but they just took out three people and they didn't care that they were kids.
But we have to talk about BTK and we have to use the initials. We can say Dennis Rader too, obviously.
Sure.
Because it was just a few days after the murders that Mary Fager got a letter from BTK that said he was a fan of this murderer's work, but he wasn't the one. It wasn't him. He wasn't the one who killed her family, but he was a fan.
What a weird thing to send somebody.
Well, obviously, he's a strange cat. We know he's a strange cat.
But hey, wasn't me. I really admire the person that did do what they did to your family.
But the thing about Dennis Rader, and you and I did, a 3-part episode on him?
We did.
He liked to send communication, and that's what ultimately got him caught. This would have given him a rush to send a letter to the wife of a murdered husband who also lost 2 daughters. He would have got a sick, perverted, euphoric rush out of that.
Yeah, you're right. He would have.
Now, we'll save it for later, but obviously the question is, did he have something to do with it? Did he send the letter as a smokescreen? Although he doesn't really need a smokescreen because nobody knows who he is. Or Was it him and he's playing around with the sole surviving member of this family?
Yeah.
So detectives looked into friends, family, co-workers, neighbors, as they would in any case. They also looked into a man that was doing some renovations at the time on the Fager home. As they looked into this contractor, they found out that he had been missing since Wednesday, December 30th, the exact same day that people believe the 3 members of the Fager family were killed.
Yeah. Based off the coroner's report.
Yep. His name is William T. Butterworth. It's a heck of a name. At the time, he was 33 years old and he went by the name Bill. Bill's wife reported him missing Thursday morning. She said that from what she understood, he was almost done with the room addition that he was working on at the Fager household and had just installed the new hot tub the previous day. This was a brand new hot tub in a brand new addition to the house.
New sunroom.
So I think, Gibbs, at first, the police thought, okay, there's a possibility here that Bill was another victim of this killer. They tried to figure out, investigate into his whereabouts. The police found Bill's van a day after the Fagers were discovered. This was Friday. And they found it at the local McDonald's.
So that's kind of interesting because that's the same McDonald's that Kelly worked at part-time.
And it wasn't far from the Fager home, right? This McDonald's was about 6 or 7 blocks away when they found Bill's van. The keys were still inside. So like you said, Gibbs, interesting. And I think to police, they got to be wondering what the heck's going on?
Yeah, where's Bill at?
And what role does he have to play in this thing? Is he a victim? Is he the killer? So a little bit of background on Bill. He was originally from California, moved to Wichita, and had lived in Wichita for about 10 years. At the time these murders happened in 1987, he was married. He and his wife had 3 kids, and they were young. He had 6-month-old twins and a 3-year-old.
Yeah, all infants, man.
That's a handful. This guy was pretty well known in the area for construction work. He had his own business called Sunshine Rooms. He primarily built sunrooms, solariums, add-on rooms, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Exactly like what he was building for the Fager.
For them. We used to call them Florida rooms around here.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah. Don't know
I bet
why.
you they don't call them that in Florida.
Probably not. They're probably like, no, it's just a sunroom.
That's an Ohio thing.
Yeah.
When it's cold out and we were wishing that we were in Florida.
Yeah.
But Bill was also having financial problems.
You know, a lot of people in the construction industry go through that, you know?
Well, it's up and down, right?
Yeah.
It's feast or famine.
You know, it's waiting to get paid, to pay the vendors on the other side, suppliers. It's back and forth.
You're rolling with the tide of the housing market. And I have a lot of friends that have been in that business. You were in that business.
I was in that business.
Sometimes they have all kinds of money and sometimes they are struggling.
When it's good, it's good. When it's bad, man,
it's real bad.
It's real bad. Yeah.
Probably why you're not doing it anymore.
I think that's why I came and saw you and took the job where I did back in the day.
Bill was 5'8" and he weighed about 180 pounds.
Yeah, it's kind of stocky, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. Not much. I guess maybe not so
Not
stocky.
too stocky.
Maybe if he was 200, that'd be stocky.
5'8", 200?
Yeah.
5'8", 240?
5'8", 240?
That's husky.
That'd be husky size.
You're getting into the husky zone there.
Yeah.
He had brown hair, blue eyes, and the last time he was seen, he was clean shaven. He was described as wearing blue jeans and a green shirt with his company logo on it, as well as a black satin jacket that had the local college logo on it, WSU, Wichita State Shockers. Love the Shockers.
Is that a big basketball thing for you?
For a long time, Wichita State was kind of the Cinderella story.
Okay.
When it came to tournament time, they would get in. They weren't, highly ranked, but they were good enough to beat a lot of teams.
They do a little damage.
they would do some damage, and then they got better. So then they weren't a Cinderella, and I stopped rooting for them as much. I root for the Cinderella teams.
You like that until they start messing with your Wildcats, and you're like, no.
Yeah, they did. They almost beat Kentucky a few years ago.
You're like, you're off my list now.
It was also said that he was wearing gym shoes. So we talk about police looking into Bill, maybe thinking he's a victim, but I don't think it took very long for things to take a turn and for the police to start to think that maybe Bill is our suspect, our main guy tied to these triple murders. And then all of a sudden, police learned from one of his family members that he had been calling his wife from Florida. Police were able to trace one of the calls to a location near a hotel in Stuart, Florida. So the Wichita police, they contact their counterparts down there in Stuart, Florida. They go to the hotel. They found Bill outside of the hotel on the payphone to his wife. This was Sunday, January 3rd.
And they also found the 1983 Volkswagen on the street right by the hotel. And when they pat him down, they find the keys on him in his pocket.
So a little tough to say at that point that you weren't driving that car, right? First of all, this car is from Kansas. Second of all, it was owned by the Fagers. And thirdly, you got the keys in your pocket.
There's no coincidence.
No denying that you took that car and have been driving it in Florida.
So it's about 1:00. They arrest him right there on the spot for grand theft. And that will give them reason to hold him. And I think that's really what they wanted and what their counterparts back in Wichita wanted. Let's get him arrested.
I think it worked out perfectly for them, right? And, if you're the police, you're thinking, great, he's got the car. We'll arrest him for that. And then once he's in custody, we can have all the time we want with him.
Yeah. I did find it interesting that they dusted the car for fingerprints. Even though they had him there, they had the keys on him, but they still dusted it to get his fingerprints off the steering wheel to prove that he was actually inside the car.
Hey, don't take any chances, man.
Just lock that case up.
Lock it down. So Bill told the arresting officers in Florida he didn't know anything about the murders. He didn't have anything to do with them. At the time of his arrest, he was wearing a pair of khakis, a polo shirt, and some loafers. So he got a little different look to him.
A little bit. What do you call it? Casual wear?
Well, you got to put on some boat shoes if you're going to go down to Florida, I guess.
That's true. Put the loafers on.
But one thing that officers in Florida said about Bill was that he was pretty calm, quiet. He didn't have a ton of money on him. He literally had a few dollars in his pocket. They ran a criminal history search on him and it came back clean. But they locked him up in the local jail. And it was just later that night that detectives from Wichita arrived to start to question him. They weren't going to waste any time.
They got that first flight out of there and got down there.
So they questioned him for several hours that night, didn't really get anywhere, picked it back up the next day on Monday.
Now, this whole time, Butterworth is saying, I didn't do anything, don't know anything about it, it's not me, I don't know anything.
But specifically, he kept telling detectives that he couldn't recall anything after Wednesday morning around 7 a.m.
Very specific.
That's very specific. Also, how did you get to Florida?
Yeah.
You don't remember any of that?
Well, how do you remember that I stopped remembering at 7 a.m.?
That's true. How do you remember that part? And apparently, he just kept crying, saying, you know what? I didn't have anything to do with this. I don't know why you're talking to me. But Gibbs, detectives aren't going to give up. This is suspect number one.
Yeah.
He took their car, drove it to Florida. Why?
We can place him at the scene because he worked there.
But he also has a reason to be at the scene.
And he does.
Unlike most killers.
Right.
Or unlike a lot of killers.
And he is a contractor, so he has access to electrical tape.
Sure.
But you're right. The biggest thing is that he is in possession of the family car, 7 states away? I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah. So I think it's two things. Why did you take the car? And why did you drive it all the way to Florida? If you don't have anything to hide. If you didn't do anything to the Fagers, why did you think it was okay to take their car? Around 4 p.m. on Monday, Bill Butterworth was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony theft. A Florida judge set his bond at $500,000. And the state of Florida provided him a public defender. And the public defender came out and said, you know what? My client says he's innocent. He says he can't recall any details. He also says he didn't do it. But the Wichita detectives, they want to get him back to Wichita. So there's a hearing, an extradition hearing, right? To try to get him back to Kansas.
Sure. They want him there so they can try him back in hometown.
Wichita prosecutors, they were hoping that Butterworth would agree voluntarily to
return back to the state.
Yeah. But I don't think he wanted to go back. His public defender fought against it.
You know, now news of this is going to get back to the community that they've arrested somebody in the murder of the Fager family. But immediately his friends, his family, they start speaking out. And they're like, Bill's not somebody that would ever hurt anybody. He would do anything to help somebody. This guy doesn't have a temper at all. It's not something he would do. I mean, they're building his character to basically say, hey, this guy wouldn't hurt a fly, man.
So everybody that knows Bill's coming out in support of Bill. What I didn't see was anybody come out and say, ooh, got to watch that Bill guy.
Yeah.
He's got a hidden temper. He's got, these skeletons in the closet. I didn't see anything like that. Now, we mentioned already, right? Police never found the gun used in the murder of Philip.
I mean, so really all they have for Bill, and it's a lot though. I mean, he did take a car that belonged to them, went across state lines. But besides that, they have him having a lot of debt, IRS issues. But is that enough to be a reason to think somebody killed somebody? Because they have a lot of debt, because they're a bad business person? There's a lot of bad business people out there.
Well, there is. I think you have to look at what problem is Bill solving money-wise by killing this dad and his 2 daughters. That's the question that you have to answer.
Yeah. Was there financial gain in doing this?
And as far as we know, there wasn't.
Right.
I mean, if anything, Gibbs, if you're a contractor, and again, I don't know if he had been paid or not, when you finish the job, you want to get paid.
Yeah.
You want everybody to be alive to be able to pay you. I would
collect. That was kind of strange around this time when Bill was arrested that the local postman for that route, he came forward and said, you know what? I remember on that day now, around that early in that morning, I heard 2 gunshots. I didn't want to report it then because I wasn't sure until I heard this story. It all makes sense to me now. So yeah, on that Wednesday, that morning, I heard 2 gunshots near that home. It's not the greatest evidence.
Well, we know there was 2 gunshots, right? That's not in doubt. I mean, it's good that he came forward, but it's almost like he's confirming something that's already known.
Right.
There were 2 gunshots. One of them fatally wounded Phil Fager.
What the police or prosecutors would need to know is like, I heard those, and then I seen this Bill guy tear off in the Volkswagen or the van or something.
Yeah, like 5 minutes after.
Yeah.
Something like that.
But if you can't put anybody on the scene, you heard something, okay.
But the state of Kansas eventually was able to get Bill back to their state, right? To face a trial with a jury of his peers.
Right.
So the jury consisted of 7 women, 5 men, plus 2 alternates. His trial started on May 9th, 1988, which when I saw that, Gibbs, I thought that's pretty quick. These murders happened almost in 1988. Right at the end of 1987, he had to be extradited, even if he was arrested right away. That's pretty quick for a trial to start.
Yeah, I agree with you. Because in the cases we cover a lot, the trial seems to take forever to get to.
Yeah, we're always talking about why does it take so long, sometimes 2-3 years to get to trial. Now, there's always reasons. There's legal wranglings. There's all kinds of things that are taking place. 5 months later, this guy's on trial.
Pretty fast.
You have a right to a speedy trial. Maybe he wanted it. Maybe he didn't want his attorneys to throw up any roadblocks. Maybe he wanted to get on with this thing and get it passed.
You know, I know,
He
and I
thought
don't
he was
know.
going to beat it.
And I wonder, does it benefit you if you're innocent? Does it benefit you to have speedy versus not?
Well, so here's the one benefit of having a speedy trial. If you're innocent, if you're found innocent, that's less time you got to spend in jail.
Well, that's true.
You know, to delay a trial 2 or 3 years, if you're not out, you're sitting in a jail cell.
You're hanging out with some interesting people.
Right. Unless you bond out or whatever, then
Right.
delay it all you want.
That's a good point.
But we know Bill was having financial difficulty. I don't think there's any way he was out. And we know he had a public defender. He couldn't afford to pay for an attorney. But Butterworth's attorney is arguing that, you know what? He still cannot recall the time from early morning Wednesday till just about right up before he was arrested in Florida.
Yeah. He doesn't remember a thing.
So the judge does something, Gibbs, that is, to me, it's strange. It's not something that I've heard of in a lot of the cases that we've covered. He approves Bill to go see a therapist. And this is a therapist that does hypnosis. And this was something that his defense attorney wanted. He thought it could help prove that Bill was innocent if the therapist could help him remember these missing details. So the therapist puts him in a hypnotic trance. They have 10 full sessions together, and then the trial starts back up. So we get to May 18th, right? It's not a long time. He has 10 sessions in like 9-10 days, maybe a session a day. He's on the stand, and he walked the courtroom through the day of the murders as he remembered them under hypnosis. He started off saying he was at the house that morning, and when he walked in, he heard some type of disturbance. He saw Phil Fager laying on the ground, fully dressed, with his coat on and his car keys next to him. For some reason, he says, he picked up the car keys, and then he started to walk downstairs. This is when, according to Bill, he heard some screams. He panicked, freaked out, and he ran outside to get away from whatever was going on downstairs.
Yeah.
Because according to him, he doesn't know. He just heard screaming. He made it to his van, but it wouldn't start. So all of a sudden, he remembered, hey, I got Philip Fager's keys to the Volkswagen. So he jumped into that and drove off. But that's where things get fuzzy again, because he doesn't remember anything after that until he was in Florida, because he says he was in shock from seeing Philip, hearing the screams. And then when he was in Florida, he heard a news broadcast about the murder. He snapped out of whatever funk he was in, and he called his wife. I'm thinking of myself as a juror, and I'm finding it very hard to believe this story that's coming from Bill Butterworth.
I think you need to be in that courtroom, maybe to see how he.
That's true.
You know?
That's true. And that's why it is hard to second guess a jury. It really is. Here's one thing that keeps going, back and forth in my head. Bill knows this family somewhat, at least, right? He's doing work for them.
Right.
He knows Philip. He knows that they have 2 daughters. My assumption, Gibbs, he also knows that Mary's not there and hasn't been there.
Yes, as he's probably been working there for the last few days. We know that.
So he hears screams in the basement that probably sound like 2 girls, or a girl, 1 girl, 2 girls. He knows they have daughters. He's not going to rush down there to find out what's going on.
Yes. I mean, it's definitely bizarre that he decides to stop, turn around,
and just run out the house. I think these are the questions that I would be asking myself as a juror. But to your point, it's really hard if you're not sitting in that courtroom and you're seeing the way that things are being delivered.
I mean, if you're somebody that has certain fears and you come into a house and you see a dead body laying there, that might ramp you up a little bit. And then to think, let me go look around, and then you hear horrific screams. maybe something in that, like, and I've seen people freak out when they see a spider on their desk.
Well, that's true.
I've seen people freak out at the weirdest things, and you can't believe how they're acting. Maybe he had some phobia that, or issue that just flipped a switch in his mind and made him act like most of us say we wouldn't have.
Well, and maybe I'm putting too much stock into myself, thinking that I see a dead body and I hear a scream and I would be man enough to descend the stairs to help these kids.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page there, because I think if I came here and I found you upstairs and I walked around and I heard screaming down here, I know I would rush down here because I'd want to see if I could do anything to help if it had anything to do with your family. Now, would I do that in a stranger's house? I don't know. I think I would.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. We like to think that we would, but you don't know unless you're in that situation.
Yeah. We can be brave right now.
Yeah, sure.
Because we're sitting here.
It's easy.
Yeah.
The trial lasted 14 days. And I think one of the issues, and you touched on it already, Gibbs, is the evidence that they had against this guy, Bill Butterworth. It was circumstantial at best, right? They didn't have any smoking gun. There was no direct evidence, nothing really tying him to the murders. It was just, okay, it's very strange that you took these people's car and drove to Florida, and you're saying you don't remember much of anything. Well, that's not proving that someone killed 3 people.
And you can try to convince the jury that he was a bad businessman, he was in debt, but he didn't have any financial gain. So what is that? Doesn't really play into it.
Yeah. I think that's the uphill battle that they had. Prosecutor didn't have any witnesses. I mean, you talked about the postman. He couldn't identify the shooter. He heard the shots. He didn't know who fired them. And apparently Bill's account of what happened hit home with the jury. On top of that, he had a lot of character witnesses, right? His wife, family members, clergy, friends.
That all compounds,
Yeah. Saying, this is what type of guy this is. There's no way that he's a killer. So on Monday, May 23rd, 1988, around 4:30 p.m., the jury took an initial vote. It was 7 for acquittal, 3 undecided, and 2 to convict. So I think just from that initial vote, you can see where the majority of jurors are leaning. They felt that the state didn't have enough evidence to show beyond a reasonable doubt that this guy, Bill Butterworth, killed the 3 members of the Fager family.
And I think that's a good thing that you said, reasonable doubt, right? Okay, so he took the vehicle. Strange. But you still have doubt. I mean,
sure.
Where's the gun?
It's a really big burden if you think about the concept of reasonable doubt. Because I have reasonable doubt about a great many things. And, for me to say unequivocally that someone killed another human being, there's got to be some pretty concrete evidence. Physical evidence for sure.
Right.
Not just that he was there that day. He could have done this. He could have done that. That's not going to sway most jurors.
No.
The episodes that we do on TCAT, you get to those trials, half the time we don't even have to dive into the trial because the evidence is all laid out. There's so much in talking about the crime itself and the investigation. We don't even dive into the trials a lot of time.
No, you're right.
It's as you would say a lot of times, as slam dunkish as you can get. This was not that.
No. I mean, the jury would say later that they had an issue with the coroner's time of death, that 24, 28 hours. They didn't really like that. I don't know how
ambiguous, or they wanted it at 27.8.
I think so. I think they really wanted it to be defined. And I just think it was going to be tough for a coroner to do.
I think it's very hard.
The girls were floating in 92-degree temperature. So
some other things that jurors later said, Gibbs, was that I think they placed a lot of stock in the fact that Bill Butterworth was an educated man who owned his own business. They felt like he was smart enough to know that it was a bad idea to drive the car of the family that you just murdered down to Florida.
Yes.
That's the sense I got, that they just felt like this is a smart guy. There's no way he could have been dumb enough to
keep that vehicle that whole time.
Yeah. And to not know that that was going to blow back on him a little bit.
And I think they also said that because, again, he's an educated guy, why would he have sat through hours upon hours of interrogation if he really felt he didn't do anything wrong? Because if he did, he would have asked for an attorney early on and just ended the interrogation.
So I get what the jurors are saying, but I think it's proven time and time again that smart people do a lot of dumb things.
Sure, they're overconfident.
They're overconfident. A lot of smart people think, you know what? I can talk to the cops. Guilty people say, you know what? I can smooth this over. I'll just talk to them. I'll tell them my version. They'll leave me alone.
Yeah, I got BS they don't understand.
Right. The jury kept deliberating, and it was the next day, Tuesday, May 24th, that they came to a decision that Bill Butterworth was not guilty on all three charges of first-degree murder and the grand theft auto charge, which that part's a little shocking.
Yeah.
Because technically he did steal the car. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I guess it's what you mean by the word steal, or, you know, the concept of, did he take it because he had to, because he was in danger?
Or he wasn't in his right state of
or,
mind.
Yes, he didn't know what he was doing. Because that one was a little strange when, you know, you get to the research that they acquitted him of that one. I get, okay, the state hasn't proven that he committed 3 murders, but I don't think it was that hard to prove that he stole the car. And he admitted to that part, right? Took the keys, ran out of the house, got in the car, drove to Florida. I didn't know I was in Florida until I got to Florida. As Bill and his family walked out of the courthouse, right, after getting all of these not guilty verdicts, he stopped to talk to the press. His attorney was with him, and Bill's attorney said he felt the verdict was very appropriate. They couldn't be happier. Bill told the press that he was glad the trial was over and that he could resume a normal life. Mary Fager didn't make any comments, didn't do any interviews.
Yeah, I feel for her.
Well, we said that, right? How tough to lose your husband, lose your 2 daughters.
Yeah.
In the blink of an eye, you're alone.
Yeah.
Now, you've got other family, moms, dads, sisters, brothers, whatever, but your immediate household is gone. It's just you.
Everything you've ever known changed in a blink of an eye.
Things that you've been working towards for however long, right? 15, 16, 17, 18 years, you've built this up and it's gone.
Yeah. Tragic.
Somebody from the press asked the prosecutor if a murderer was still out there. And the prosecutor, Gibbs, said, yeah, he's out there. Bill Butterworth. So, and we find that a lot, right? Especially, you know, in these unsolved cases, the prosecution believes it's a person.
Right.
And they should, because they shouldn't be taking people to trial that they don't believe are guilty. Now, I also don't think they should take people to trial if they don't have the evidence to convict, but that's a fine line. Now, there's some gray area there.
Well, I think so. Yeah, for sure.
But there's no doubt the prosecutor felt as though Bill Butterworth killed these 3 people.
As well as the chief of police. He was very solid on this.
Yeah, he was quoted as saying the department charged the correct person in the beginning and nothing was said in court or to the jury that has changed the facts in the case. But the fact of the matter is, double jeopardy prevents Bill Butterworth from ever being tried for these murders. Gibbs, I think there's no doubt. One of the keys in this case was the hypnosis. It probably was the key factor.
Oh, absolutely.
The prosecution didn't like it. They didn't like the fact that the judge allowed Bill Butterworth to get on the stand and essentially tell a story detailing out what he had learned under hypnosis.
Sure. And to throw that weight behind it that he learned it under hypnosis, right?
Gives it credibility.
Sure. Now, I think the prosecutor's saying, well, wait a minute. How do we, sure, we had a therapist, a doctor, whatever, but shouldn't there have been more, you do your thing, we do our thing with them, then we present? Why is it okay that he has 10 sessions with this guy? You, the judge, allow him to tell in his own words what happened that day based off what the hypnosis said. And that's where, I think that's where the problem lays.
Well, the prosecution had a problem with it for sure.
Huge problem with it. Because I think, like you said, that was probably the deciding factor with the jurors.
Yeah, no, I believe it was. I also read where it was the first time that this had ever been done in the state of Kansas up to that point. And like I said, the prosecution didn't like it. They actually fought in the courts after the trial was over to try to get clarity on whether this was something that should be allowed or not. Now, it wasn't going to change the outcome of their trial or the jury's decision. But
you're right. As a prosecutor, you want to know, could this ever be pulled on me again? Because if it can be, I need to figure out how to defend against it.
So I think we switch gears and we have to talk a little bit about Dennis Rader, BTK, bind, torture, and kill serial killer.
Mastermind.
Somewhat.
Yeah.
Until the end.
Yeah, they always get sloppy at the end, man.
Yeah, he got a little sloppy. The thing about Dennis Rader, for me, and you know, people can go back and listen to the 3-part TCAT that we did on him if they haven't heard it. It was early days TCAT, so be nice.
Yeah, really early.
It was really early. It was some of the first episodes we did. The thing that's always stuck with me about Dennis Rader is I don't know if he would have ever been caught. You know, he was dormant for many, many years.
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, you know, he had this compulsion to communicate, and a lot of killers do.
Yeah.
You can go to Zodiac. There's so many killers, David Berkowitz. There's a lot of people that killing is a part of what they do, but there's also a component that they get a rush from the communicating with the cops, communicating with the media, playing with people,
right,
inciting fear through their communication, as well as these violent acts that they're committing. But we know, right? BTK was operating in the Wichita area, the area where the Fager family lived during this time frame that they were killed. And Dennis Rader, after he was arrested years later, confirmed that he really did send that letter to Mary Fager after her family's deaths.
Yeah, I think early on there was some speculation that was it really him that sent the letter or not, but like you said, when he got arrested, he's like, yeah, that was me
that sent the letter, but he never said that was me that killed the Fagers.
Right.
And he could have easily, once he was arrested, once he knew he was done for, they had all the evidence they needed to convict him, he could have said, you know what? I killed the Fagers too. He never did.
And it's not unlike him. He killed a family before. I mean, so he didn't have a problem with that.
And he, if I remember correctly, confessed to murders that the police weren't 100% sure he committed.
Right.
That they thought maybe were, you know, they didn't have maybe the evidence to link to him. And he said, I did those.
I did that. Yeah.
Now it's been a long time, years since we did that one, but that just, to me, I think if Dennis Rader would have killed the Fager family, knowing his love for attention,
right,
he would have taken credit for it. Yeah. That's my feeling.
Especially in the end when he got arrested. I mean, at that point, what did he have to lose by saying, by the way, it was me? Besides the fact to leave it out there, making people always wonder.
And it's in the name, right? BTK, bind. We know that Dennis Rader bound his victims. The 2 girls were bound with electrical tape. He also was a strangler.
Yeah.
And 2 girls were strangled. And like you said, Gibbs, he killed families. He killed multiple members of the same family. But the police never really thought this was him. And I'm sure they based that on, you know, studying how the crimes were committed, They had some basis for that. But there's an interesting tidbit that links Dennis Rader to Bill Butterworth.
Yeah.
When Rader was finally arrested in 2005, he received a court-appointed attorney that just happened to be the same guy that represented Bill Butterworth in 1988.
So strange, you know?
It is very strange.
You have this case connected in the beginning with a letter that Dennis Rader sends.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, it's reconnected again through the Butterworth connection, of the having the same public defender.
And there's so many factors that go into that, right? This guy's a public defender still after 17 years.
Yeah.
He hasn't moved on. He hasn't moved to private practice.
It's a dedication.
Yeah. He's dedicated to being a public defender. I think as we wrap it up, this is one of those unsolved cases, and we've had a few like this, that police say is closed, right? They're not out looking for anyone that killed the Fager family. They thought they solved it. The jury thought otherwise. They believe it was Bill Butterworth. They're not looking for anybody else.
Right.
They never had any evidence that suggested there was more than one person involved in the murders. So who else do they have to look for?
That's it right there. You're exactly right.
According to them, no one. But that's it. That's the case of the Fager family murders. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to hear those?
Let's hear them.
Hey guys, this is Caleb Sims from BB, Arkansas. I just wanted to call and say thank you for what y'all do. I've been listening for a few months now, and I finished all the true crime all the time. I'm on the West Memphis 3 for Unsolved, and I had a curious case from the town next door that I grew up in, Douglas Kirk, who went missing in 1995, I believe, and I'm pretty sure the case was botched from the beginning, but it's pretty cool because I grew up around his parents in church, and my dad grew up around him, so just thought it'd be something cool for y'all to look in on. And then, yeah, thank y'all, and I just sent y'all an email too, and I just figured it'd be cool to call y'all. So thank you for what y'all do, and keep your own time ticking.
I think it is very cool to call us.
Really cool.
And leave a voicemail. So that's one we need to look into for a possible future episode for sure.
Douglas Kirk.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Ann from Salt Lake City, Utah, by way of Minnesota. I have a couple case suggestions for you guys. The first one is from Minnesota, and it's the young boy who just recently got pushed thrown from the balcony of the Mall of America. And I know there's probably not a lot of information on that, but it'd be really cool to hear your guys' take on that. As well, the murder of Mandy Matula from Eden Prairie, Minnesota. I actually went to high school with her brother. So it'd be really cool to hear you guys do a podcast on her. Anyways. Love the podcast. I've been binging it for months, and I just love what you guys do. Thanks so much, and keep it on time, Gibby.
I heard Salt Lake City. I thought, is it going to be another fry sauce thing?
Fry sauce voicemail. So 2 good suggestions.
Yeah.
The Mall of America, place I've always wanted to go.
Been there once. I have.
Have you?
Yeah.
I don't know why I don't really care for malls, but anytime you tell me like this is a something big or something that you can't find anywhere, I want to go there.
Yeah, I wasn't that impressed with it.
Yeah. So cases like those can be very tough just because sometimes there is just not enough information to do an hour.
Right.
But you and I have talked about, and we haven't done any recently, combining.
Yeah.
We get an hour or an hour and 15 minutes out of 2 cases or 3 cases. If we can find, some type of connection, I think it would make for an interesting episode.
Do a tie-in like you did that. The last one we did was the one on the one street. I can't remember. Yeah,
St. Albans
Avenue. Yeah.
Hey guys, this is John. I'm a medic here at the Chicago Fire Department. I like to listen to you guys pass the time. And I gotta say, seeing some stuff that happens around here, listening to you guys after some calls really helps clear my mind after some stuff. What's interesting is I always think of you guys because the police department and I believe the FBI have recently announced that they're looking into the possibility of an active very, very active serial killer here in the Chicagoland area. So if that ever gets solved, it'd be incredible to hear you guys talk about that. But I just wanted to say thank you guys for everything that you do. Like I said, you guys really help clear some things up for me so I don't have to take them home. You know, it's a lot easier to pass 48-hour shifts when I have you guys, weird as it sounds, talking in my ear. And of course, you know, I'm not Team Gibby. I'm not Team anybody. I'm Team TCAT. So with that being said, thanks again, guys. Keep your own time ticking.
Love it. So Gibbs, you and I talk a lot about us and the research that we do and needing a palate cleanser.
Yes.
You know, this guy's doing a very tough job.
Extremely tough.
He needs a palate cleanser.
If we can help that out, I'm all for it, man.
Yeah. I mean, you know, some of the things that he must see in real life, you know, us talking about it, us reading about it, it can't compare, right? It's not great. It's not great to be doing as much research as we do kind of on the psyche. You got to be real careful mental health wise.
Right.
But so does he, man. He's seeing it day in, day out firsthand.
Living it, man.
Yeah, you got to take care of yourself.
Definitely appreciate what you and your crew's doing, man.
Yeah, no doubt. And I just assume that there's 4 or 5 serial killers in Chicago already active.
Just
because it's a big city and there's a lot of murders.
Be an easy spot to, call home if you were one.
I don't know what the FBI estimates really about the number of active serial killers. My feeling is always that if we really truly knew the number, we'd never leave the house. I just assume there are many more than we want to think.
I agree with you.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. This is Taylor out of Raleigh again. I was calling because I have a couple questions. The first one is, number one, I cannot seem to listen to the unsolved episodes before episode 96, and I'm wondering why that is. It seems like every site or app I go to doesn't have it available before that. And then I also was wondering why you guys stopped doing the listener hometown episodes where the listener comes in and does the episode with you guys. Also, I'm a huge fan of the podcast, both of them, Unsolved and True Crime All the Time. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Keep doing what you're doing and keep your own time ticking. Thanks. Bye.
Well, the first part's easy.
Yep.
Anything older than 6 months goes on Stitcher Premium. So you need to go out to Stitcher Premium and you can listen to all the TCAT you want and others on that site.
Yeah. And they even have a free 30-day trial.
Yeah.
That, a lot of our listeners, they binge so quick. Like they'll knock those out in no time. The second part of the hometown listener. So that was an experiment and something we thought maybe we would do on a regular basis. We started Unsolved and I can't remember the timing of it. So it definitely was, okay. It was tough. It was a tough episode because to have somebody else on, you lose control. And Jordan was great. We love Jordan.
Oh, yeah.
And I liked the episode. But you don't know what type of audio they have.
Right.
And at some point, we realized that it was going to be too tough to do that on a regular basis.
Logistics, all that. Yep.
Scheduling, trying to get their schedule to align with ours and everybody, researching and writing enough that everybody could speak intelligently. It's tough to do.
Really tough.
All right. That's it. That's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.